And let's start. All right. Welcome, everyone, to another session of the Crowded Headspace. My name is Peter Louie.
My name is Ken K. And currently today is June 3rd, 12:13 a.m.
Nice. All right. And so tonight we'll be your hosts for this lovely evening. So let's get right to it. Tonight's topic is essentially going to be a continuation from the previous podcast we've had, speculations for the future and AI.
Yeah.
So,
Sounds good. Start us off, Peter.
yeah. So where we left off last time, we were essentially talking about, we went over a lot about ChatGPT and kind of what kind of industries it would affect, as well as the ways it would kind of affect the workforce as to where it comes in to our daily lives and a bunch of other things too. And also our own speculations as to how it'll affect the job market. This one, we're going to dive a little bit more on kind of the, I guess, lower level side of things. And what I mean by that is kind of the usage of AI in our own lives as individuals, rather than as to its place in businesses and giant companies.
Mm-hmm.
So
Let's see.
yeah, let's see. Yeah, let's start at the top. We both can see it.
Yeah,
So
ChatGPT 4. I'll just go straight into ChatGPT 4 came out. It's not out yet, right? It's just still in beta.
so GPT-4 has actually been out for a while. It was okay. So technically, OpenAI had it for like 6 months before it released, but it was actually officially released to the public around April. I think it was April. For
So right now,
GPT-4 subscribers.
so if I go to ChatGPT right now, for premium subscribers, okay, not for
Subscribers,
free,
yes.
not for.
Yes. They still have a paywall on that.
Do you
They are
think
limited.
do you think they'll be converted to free at some point?
Definitely, I think so. The reason why I say that is, right, I think it's a matter of computational power. So to run one of those, so let's say you send a query to GPT-4, or just ChatGPT in general, the amount it costs to run one of those queries versus, let's say, a Google search, I think is like 10 times more. And that's actually a huge increase in computational power to run one query. And so, you can only assume with a larger model, making those queries are going to take up more processing power and more energy. And as such, they're kind of limiting it. GPT-4 has actually been rolling out slowly. I think you have to be on a wait list for it. I think it was, or wait, no. GPT-4's API was waitlisted.
API is waitlisted. So we could
Yes.
technically use for public for free. You got to
Yes.
incorporate somewhere else to utilize it. I see.
But in terms of just its commercial usage, as to ChatGPT as a front, right? Not the language model itself. Anyone can essentially use that with a paid subscription, of course. I think for a time they actually stopped giving out, or not giving out, but selling those paid subscriptions because of how overloaded they are. Even now, they're still pretty overloaded. If you have a subscription, at the bottom, there's going to be a small little disclaimer. It's going to say, you're limited to, I think, 25 queries every 3 hours, which isn't that many, to be honest.
That is not a lot. And
No.
if that's given, that you'd be like, okay, I need to write these queries really well enough to get the exact answer I want to get.
Yeah. To make you use out of them, otherwise you're going to be blocked for 3 hours.
Imagine
GPT-4,
for example. We'll do it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
But GPT-4 is tremendously more powerful than GPT-3, I think, by I don't quite remember, but there was a test done with GPT-4 as to how many tests it could pass, and that included things like the state bar exam and a bunch of other things, and it by far surpassed GPT-3 and GPT-3 3.5. So that's kind of insane to think about.
I mean, it's already enough powerful if we give a question to ChatGPT 3.5 as a free user to answer questions. It gives it not 100% accurate, but about 90% for sure accurate itself, right? Which is kind of crazy with enough detail explanation why beyond as well too. So,
if I remember correctly, I think the statistic was, I think, around 80% correct. At least I don't remember the exact problems it was given. I think this was with math problems. It was 80% of the time correct. But there was a study being done, that's still currently being done, I think, that it's a matter of how you query it as well as the additional follow-up queries. Because I think you can increase ChatGPT's accuracy and also like its correctness in general by, I think, like almost by like 80%, I think it was, by simply asking it to walk through its steps. That's something to think about, right? So if you can ask it to go through something step by step rather than ask for the answer, it'll be able to pick up on its own wrongdoings, if there are any, and correct them. And that's kind of crazy to think about, right? Now, combine that with something like AutoGPT, which we'll get to later, which is kind of essentially it's essentially a small version of an AGI, which is an artificial general intelligence. Not really, but kind of. So quick context, AutoGPT, right? So you've got a single query that you would ask ChatGPT, right, when you're using it, right? That's like the equivalent of a single thought, right? But then you also have things like AutoGPT and like Baby AGI, those things, right? Those essentially string together queries to create a chain of thoughts. And so it's kind of able to reason as well as perform more complex tasks. So, and you think about that, right? What if it starts incorporating that methodology of querying, right? You combine that with AutoGPT and it starts querying itself step by step to perform something. And if it correctly did what it was supposed to do, whether that's a task you give it or whether that's a question you give it, right? That would significantly increase its accuracy. Let's see. But yeah, like, I mean, the impact of ChatGPT is definitely going to be profound in the next few years. I think right now, like, this was more recent, so I'm trying to dig out at the top of my head right now, but I think it was like 58% of the population knows that ChatGPT exists, and
58,
only I think 58. That's still a lot. That's still a lot. They know it exists, but at the same time, right? That's a lot in the sense that they know it exists, but also keep in mind, on the flip side, that's like 32, right? Wait, 42. 42% of people don't know it exists, right? And that kind of makes you think, what's going to happen when like they kind of find out it exists and like they're all of a sudden like swept away by it, whether it's ChatGPT or just any other AI application, right? So that kind of ties back into what we talked about with the workforce back in our previous podcast. But like, think about it for a second, right? 58%.
50.
Now, yes, but I don't remember I don't remember the next statistic, but I think it was only 14% of that 58, or 14% of the total population actually uses it.
It has to be just over 14%. I don't think it's 58%. Within that 58%, 14% use it. I think it's probably just 14% overall. That makes more sense.
It might be so. I don't quite remember it. I don't have the reference paper here, unfortunately. I haven't grabbed that yet. I was digging for it earlier, but I couldn't find it. But think about this for a second. Well, granted, something to keep in mind, to what extent does that 14% use it? It could vary. Some people could use it for just very, very basic things. Some people could use it very extensively and like accomplish daily tasks with them or accomplish daily work activities that are part of their job. It'll vary. But 14%, that's still a good bit. But yeah, I mean, you think about it, like the awareness. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. 58%. Okay, ChatGPT technically was announced around December 2022, and right now recording is June 3rd.
November, I think.
November. Well, yeah. Well, late November, early September, earliest December that came out. So it's nearly like half a year, and more than half the population knows about this tool exists.
Yes.
It's crazy, right? On top of a 14% utilization rate itself, which sounds not a lot. But
it did only take 2 months for ChatGPT to reach 100 million users, which is insane still.
Right. I mean, compared to Facebook, it took a year to get that much year to get that
Mm-hmm.
much users, whereas ChatGPT is 2 months, which is, oh my god. But 14% is, like, to be honest, how much people are aware of it. 14% seems a lot low for that.
Yes.
What
Uh, I
do you
think
agree?
that's so. I think that makes sense for the reason that you have to take into account the older population, right? They're going to be less inclined to kind of learn these new technologies and utilize them and incorporate them into their daily lives. Whether to what extent,
Right.
regardless, the likelihood is a lot less. Right? People who are younger and more adept with technology are going to find this and go like, oh, I could use this for this, and that. Right? They're going to be able to quickly learn about it more. And so, you know, with them being able to quickly learn about it, they'll find places where they can apply it. I think that's kind of the critical thing here as to knowing where to apply such tools.
I mean,
So
even
let's
still
see.
though, like
Yeah.
there's so many businesses right now using ChatGPT. Well, okay, not
Hmm.
not all businesses use
There's a
ChatGPT, but
lot
like
of
they
spots you
have
could
their
use it.
own. Okay, okay. Let me just clarify. 14% of utilization is just ChatGPT or just any machine learning format structure. What's
Just
your example?
ChatGPT. This paper was
Okay,
just
okay, that
ChatGPT.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
If you
that
were,
makes sense.
yeah, no, I did not mean like the entire, like just AI in general. If we were talking AI in general, like at a business scale, right, and like at a company scale, AI is everywhere. AI is already everywhere.
Okay, because and 14% seems way low. And also,
Mm,
people don't use ChatGPT, especially for business users, because whatever you put in ChatGPT will be public information and everyone will know about this
that is true.
if
It
you
does get
find a way to
processed.
query in itself. Of
Hmm.
course, if it's false information, like that trying to feed into ChatGPT, of course that'll be filtered out. But if it seems relevant information that can store it out, seems good to it, then they'll find a way to pass through it, right? So but 14% is a lot. Do you know? Well, I'm assuming because you don't have statistics on the side. If you do you know what percentage of that 14% is like what they identify as, either as a student or as like teacher?
That I do not know, unfortunately.
You don't know. All good, all good. I don't expect that. And so of
Mm.
course, I don't think OpenAI is not. They don't open data about that in general to tell who used the
So they
most.
were open source, but they eventually went closed source.
Ah, we love
When
that.
I don't quite remember, but I know I know Elon Musk was kind of furious about that. He was in a recent interview, he literally like explained to the reporter what open source was and why it's called open AI and why he chose that name. But like, yeah, honestly,
Now
with
it's
like,
closed source.
I don't know how to feel about that either. Being it, like how to feel about it going closed source because AI is such a powerful tool, right? It's something that's definitely going to shift the way we live our lives in these next few years. And so, like, not even next few years, but just for the rest of our lives. There's no doubt about that. And so it's like,
No,
now that it's
definitely.
closed source, it's like, you know, where's all that power focused?
You'd be like, oh, thanks, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's open source, at least they can see how it's structured and how they code it out. But it's closed
Yes.
source, they can add their own bias in a way that
Mm-hmm.
could influence in a way, which is that would be a little bit sketchy there. Also, speaking of um, Elon Musk, not Elon Musk specifically, but like speaking of like big tech companies, I know
Yeah.
Facebook is planning to, or Meta is planning to release their own AI as well too.
Yep.
And what they have claimed is they're the powerful one out of all AI model, which is like okay,
Oh,
but
that's an
that's a
interesting
bold
claim.
ass statement.
That's very bold.
That's very bold, but I that's what they have been showing it out and telling us like
Mm-hmm.
be excited for it. So I don't know, but it will be coming out as well too, regarding
Watch
with
it be like,
Meta.
watch, watch it be like Bard at launch. Bard's gotten better, but like, Bard at launch was very scuffed, to
Oh
say the
no,
least.
it was bad.
Have you tried Bard?
I haven't used it. I haven't used it. I heard, but I heard a lot of people use it before, and they were like, "No." Mm-mm.
Dang.
So yeah,
If I'm
have you used? Are you using it
correct,
right now?
I have tried Bard. It wasn't that great. I tried it months ago, so it's more likely different now. But from what I've heard and from what I've seen, and people kind of doing a few comparisons as of late, it's gotten better. If I remember correctly, I think Bard was actually using ChatGPT's outputs for training at some point.
Oh no.
That's
Oh no.
think about that for a second.
An AI model based upon another AI. No, no, that's not good. That's not good at
Stuff data
all
set.
because the accuracy itself for ChatGPT is not 100% accurate, and
Yeah,
learning that based upon learning that's 100% accurate, it's gonna be
you
less.
just layer it on. It's like
Yeah.
compressing an image
Imagine,
or like
imagine.
re-downloading. Yeah.
Fun
I
fact
was
though, like I see a
yeah.
lot of YouTube videos regarding like you can create your own ChatGPT as well too.
Yes,
Have
that is
you?
one thing I want to bring up. So, uh, so something I kind of want to finish one thing before I move on here. Uh,
Yeah.
like before I start talking about this is so there was a paper that kind of came out from Google. Not a paper. I don't remember. It was a leak of sorts, but it was essentially expressing concerns for the future how the open source community will actually be the ones leading the AI revolution, and it won't be the companies. It was, I think it was titled "We Have No Moat" or something. We have no moat. Yeah, so we have no moat, and neither does OpenAI. That's a paper. Uh, yeah, so this paper was essentially, yeah. So it's like how models are kind of starting to improve quickly, and like how open source will eventually take, I guess, the lead on all of it. And that's kind of interesting to think about, right? Because what we've been thinking is, or at least what I think is going to still happen, is big companies are still going to be primarily in power with regards to AI technologies and utilizing them, right? And also being to like provide services too based off AI. And so this is kind of interesting. It's an interesting read. I read part of it, didn't finish it, but it's essentially about how like open source will essentially take the lead. I know I've said that twice, but like, what do you think about that? Because I know the open source community, just in general software development, right? You've got like on GitHub and everything. Those have like repositories can take off on there, right? Some person starts a good as someone that has a good idea, they start a project, people start building on it, and it absolutely grows into something phenomenal. What do you think?
And then the big tech, and then the big tech company comes in and like, yeah, we'll buy that repository, make it private, and
Oh,
close everything going
geez,
on with it. What happens next?
that has
So,
happened.
um, but there's a lot of regulations as it going on, or the big tech company comes in play. There's a lot of ethics behind it. Comes in play and just utilize it, not giving credit to the open source community that they have modified away their own ways, which is that's why licensing is important when it comes to making it open public repositories on like GitHub or Git in general. Um, but I do personally believe, like especially as of right now, the trend is getting back to workforce. Many people are getting laid off. Many talented people are getting laid off right now from big tech
Yes.
companies right now. They don't have much to do because there's not much hiring going on the side,
Mm-hmm.
which creates to okay, so we will. You know what? I will spend my time working in open source community because it doesn't get pay me that well, but at least I
Mm-hmm.
can contribute this project right, to make it more better. And maybe this could be as its own business entity itself at some point later on, which people tend to do that. And currently, I know a lot of repositories have been converted to an actual business, so they discontinue their contribution because it's a private thing now. But
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with your statement that open source community will be the foundation when it comes to it of establishing new code and new generate idea because companies has limited ideas of like doing like things that can be creative. Like open source is literally like, oh, you can do whatever you want as long as ethical itself, or at least it's
Yeah.
legal to do this. So yeah, I think it will be powerful, and especially AI as of right now. There's not much regulation in terms of it, so they can do whatever they want to do, and this is the opportunity chance to enhance that as the furthest as could possibly be without any legal
Mm-hmm.
restrictions. So I think, like the article has because I was kind of skimming through as well too, will be the main dominator when it comes to open source itself. Um, Did you describe what open source is in general, people? Or do
Oh
you want me to
yeah,
describe about it?
yeah. Go and describe it for people.
Yeah, so open source, so technically when it comes to code itself, and just in general, like you will find code that's within like company that's called closed source and you do not openly share it into anyone else. Open source means as long as you give credit to the code that who created initially or who contributed to the course, you can utilize it and modify in your own way and use it as an event to put on. There's several repositories on my side that I have created myself. Even my capstone project itself is open source, so people can use our engine to either play with it or actually modify in a way to enhance it better to contribute stuff their own way as well too. So what's open source is as long as you give credit, which is there's different ways of giving credit based upon what licensing they use, we're able to utilize it. It's not open. It's not open code. Open code means you can just use it whenever you want to by copy and pasting it. Like overstack flow is basically an example of open code that you can just copy and paste what they have. Of course, you need to modify in your own way because it's not going to be exactly the same standard cases. But open source is basically an entire repository itself or not. If the GitHub repository or the repository where the code is distributed as open source does not have a license, then you don't need to follow it. But major ones do have licenses, so you have to be aware of that. That's what makes it different, and that's where the ethical thing comes in play. And how much credit that person should get received or not is a whole different story that we could talk about as well too with open source. Because actually, that we should do that. We should have a discussion about this open source.
Ooh, that would be a good
With
topic.
regarding ethics too, because there was a lot of talk about regarding with our organization ethics class in terms of computer science, and also on top of that, it's still a heated topic. Like, who gets what in general.
Hmm. I've added it.
Speaking of open source, thank you. Speaking of which, open source software for creating a ChatGPT. Yeah. Do you think you'll create your own ChatGPT?
Okay, so that's an interesting one to go on. Because definitely there's going to be a lot of AI applications that are going to be rolling out. They've been absolutely pouring out of the gate at this point. Whether that's like our own chat, like whether that's their own ChatGPT in terms of their own model, or whether that's making API calls to OpenAI. So honestly, when it comes to the software development world, there's a lot of ways to go about it. Really, as you know, like there's millions of approaches you can do for anything. But in terms of like AI applications, like I've even made one application so far of my own when ChatGPT was getting hyped up, and that's Ash. I don't know if you've spoken with Ash much. So Ash is a bot in my server.
Is it on? Okay, so like,
Yes.
is it on your server right now? Okay.
It's actually on my server right now. I've currently have the Python implementation of Ash running. So for those who don't know, I've made a Discord bot named Ash, which is kind of an abbreviated name for AI Synthetic Human, ASH. And essentially is a chat bot that literally talks. And it's in one of our Discord servers, and inside one of the specific chat rooms. I have it running on the school servers, by the way. So it's on 24/7.
You have it or
What?
you have it or you have.
It's running on the school servers right now.
Oh boy, it's on Church of Evan as well too, or
What?
is it? What server is it running it on? My bad.
This one, Treehouse. It's all the way in
okay, so
Ash Playground. Do you see it?
okay. Oh, okay. Oh, I see it.
Mm.
Oh, I am blind.
But yeah, like there's Ash Playground, Ash Lab. Ash Lab is meant for just more like straight up forward responses. Ash Playground is more conversational. Anyways, so this chat bot is essentially a Python bot that utilizes OpenAI's API to kind of utilize their language model. But in terms of creating our own models, that is definitely something that's already like being worked on and out there currently on GitHub. You can find a bunch of repositories where there's like models you can train on your own, or you can even just download models that people have made. I think so. There's one model called Llama. There's another model called GPT for everyone or GPT for all. I don't remember I don't quite remember exactly what the name was, but there are models out there. You're playing with it right now? Fun.
I'm just testing it out.
Okay.
It's
I also have a JavaScript implementation of it that can talk and listen.
Oh my god, this is crazy. Okay, actually, this is more than I thought it would be ChatGPT looking like.
Yeah, this was a pet project of mine that I had during February and March. I've not really added much to it since April, though, since I started converting it over to JavaScript.
Wait, I remember that you
Yeah.
were talking to me briefly about doing like a call. Do you invite into the call to someone else and just ask them
Yeah.
to? Is that still
Yeah.
there?
Okay. Hold on. I'm going to see if I can pull it up now. I'm gonna see if I can boot up the what is it? The JavaScript implementation as I kind of keep talking about this. Um. Anyways, to continue talking while I pull this up. Let's see. Video might cut out here a little bit, mostly because I have it over my screen. Um. So, anyways, to answer your question from earlier, there are also like open source models out there that people can download and train on their own data sets if they want, or even like pre-trained models like GPT-4all, which is kind of a play on the word GPT-4, right? Um, that's also a language model
Right.
that people can run on their local machines. Um, and you can build your own applications with those and kind of create your own implementations of them and utilize them in different ways. Let's see here.
This is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is okay. Cause I only use ChatGPT myself when I use like
Hmm.
any AI necessary things. After using
What?
yours, it's like after using your
So
ChatGPT, it's really just I'm talking to someone. It feels like it's
yeah, so I gave it a very specific prompt, like initialization prompt that's meant to like that instructs it to chat like a person. That's the reason why it feels more like a person. So a lot of it is based off the prompt. That's kind of how it always goes. Let's see here. Trying to do this quickly.
I also love the Ash current status saying play as VS Code.
Yeah, I have her set to that. Let's see. I also need to.
Oh, you're giving it gender now, as I heard at this point. Okay.
Well, so the character icon is actually Ash from Titanfall. So that's why I've labeled it as such since it seems fitting. But if it decides to dub itself otherwise, I will be happy to oblige. Okay. I need to stop this school instance one to run this one, so you might notice it not responding anymore.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see if I can get this going here.
Ash and I was having a good conversation. Come on, you cut it off like that. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know if I like
Hmm.
because I know that these plugins can also like while you're pulling them. I know these plugins can also incorporate to assisting with code development as well too, which is going to be crazy.
Oh, yes. People have made
But
applications that are specifically tuned for like software development. Like people have used like models trained on purely software and they use that to consult on different things. I know there's a website called, I think it's, ooh, what was it called? What was it called? Let me look for it. I think it's called Find. Yeah, PHIND, find.com. It's a AI search engine for developers. And that's like specifically for like software development. It's kind of interesting.
Find, you say?
Find, PHIND.
Oh, I see. Oh, what the?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, you can drop code blocks in there, URLs, anything. It's pretty amazing. I've not used it too much.
That
I've
is.
primarily used GPT-4 if I needed anything code-wise. Oh, something to mention. The bot, like Ash, was primarily actually made by ChatGPT. A lot of the code came from
Oh,
ChatGPT. The thing is, though, 90% of the time it didn't work when I first copy and pasted, but it was what I based it off of and tuned myself to get it to actually start going. So it's kind of interesting if you think about it, right? The applications of software development, it's kind of crazy, right? You hand a developer who doesn't know much about a specific language but knows like how to program in general, they can start developing right in that language right away. Like so I knew very little JavaScript, or at least my JavaScript knowledge was like 2.5 years old. It was ancient, very rusty, right? I start throwing stuff into ChatGPT, and here I am now with a functional like AI chatbot that can listen and talk in JavaScript. All right, hold on. I
We
just need
kind
to
of talked
grab
about we
the
kind of
keys.
talked about some last podcasts regarding with the
Yeah,
education with the chat AI. So I'm not gonna talk more about that, but
I
it's
me're
crazy.
free
Like you
to.
can like I don't want to talk the same stuff twice again. I mean we could. I it feels redundant, but like okay, if I do want to talk about it,
I'm
I want to
just I'm
say
just trying to get
why.
this going.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time. In terms of that, I know my friend, or at least my one of capstone project, because our source is already open source for our capstone project that we have created for our VR engine. So
Hmm.
it's okay to use as public information to use it. So literally, one of my friend literally copy paste all the files on the engine for both the client side, the server side, the core system, the commons, the interface, all of that. And then what we asked he later, once he copied 868 files, I think that's how many files he copied and pasted with it, which is kind of crazy. Oh,
Oh
hey,
wow.
Ash. Um,
I don't know if
into,
I can move her to the stage though. We might have to go to a different chat for a moment, but we'll see. We'll see.
but I think
Oh,
that, oh, she's up.
hello, Ash. Are
Hey,
you
Ash.
there? Oh boy. Oh, I think it bricked. It bricked.
Oh, no. Oh, no. I was expecting something.
I don't think it's able to
Um,
handle save channels, which is a little odd. Here, hold on. Wait, I'm gonna try one more time. So something to note, one sentence at a time, because otherwise he's gonna get really overloaded and like start jumbling a bunch
yeah,
of words.
I'll shush. I'll shush.
Uh,
Hey, Mr. Kangs, what's up? Did I miss something?
hello, Ash. Hello, Ash.
Yo, Poyo Poke, what's good? How's it going?
Not too bad. We're currently hosting a podcast called The Crowded Headspace. I think the servers are a little loaded right now, so it's really slow.
Ah, that sucks, man.
Oh,
Hopefully the servers clear up soon. Have you tried
there it
restarting
is.
your connection?
You talk.
How's it going, Ash?
It's going great, Mr. Kangs. Just chilling out here talking with some awesome people. What about you? How's your day been so far?
It's pretty alright. We just made a recording our crowded headspace right now. Talking about AI. What's your thoughts about that?
That sounds like a pretty interesting conversation, Mr. Kangs. What kind of AI are you guys discussing? Any cool examples or use cases to share?
We're specifically going over large language models and how they are a powerful tool.
Yeah, large language models sure are an interesting area of AI research. It's fascinating how they are able to understand and generate natural language. Have you guys heard of GPT-3? It's pretty amazing what it's capable of doing.
We're currently up to GPT-4.
Yeah, GPT-4 sure looks promising. It will be exciting to see what new features and capabilities it brings
Just a
to the
little
table.
outdated.
AI advancements are happening so rapidly that it's hard to keep up with all the latest developments. Yeah, that's true. AI is such a rapidly evolving field that what you learn today might very well become outdated tomorrow.
Execute order
But at least it
55.
keeps us on our
Anyways. All right.
Wait, what's that execution?
So that was something I did. So to execute voice commands, I've decided to name them after like different double numbers. You got 55, you got 66, 77, 99.
Oh boy. Execution 55.
A Star Wars
Terrifying,
reference.
but that is-
Star Wars reference, you know.
I love it. I love it, and I'm just gonna say that is crazy.
Yeah, order 55 is exit. Order 66 is switch to the GPT 3.5. Order 77 is switch to GPT 4. 99 is to wipe its memory. Basically,
Oh,
fresh
you can wipe
conversation.
it.
Yeah, basically just wipe the JSON file of its memory. But yeah, so
That is crazy.
yeah, it's really not too hard to set up either. And if anyone's curious, it's on my GitHub repo. It's there. But yeah. Anyways. But doop, disconnect. Yeah, in terms of
Going
like
back to
people can make their own
the-
models and also like use
Going
OpenAI
back to the
ones.
conversation. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Going back to the conversation
what's up?
that I was talking about. Going back to the conversation talking about in terms of workforce itself. Was it workforce or education wise? Like you can literally all the
Mhm.
all the code that we feed into, for the game engine that we create called Chat Improver, and it's like 864 files. And this one guy did all copy paste all the files and put it all into it in ChatGPT, and say this file is this file is this file is this file is this, and go on. And then once he feed all that file, he's like, hey, create a plugin of Galaga into it. And ChatGPT's like, yeah, for sure. And he literally developed one, which is kind of crazy to do about it.
Mhm.
And I was like, and when I heard that, and then he actually showed me the code, how ChatGPT responded. I was like,
Oh,
oh
wow.
my god, that's more efficient than what I wrote for my case scenario. It's terrifying in the case, and it's also
Yeah.
crazy as well too. Which, yeah.
Speaking of feeding your own
Honestly, before we
documents
go-
in. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
No.
I've got something I can kind of just dive into here. So speaking of feeding your own information, right? So ChatGPT, I think the normal context window is 4,096 tokens, which equates to around like 3,000 words. I could be wrong on that. Wait,
That sounds about
3,000 characters. 3,000 characters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite remember, but no, I think it's 3,000 words. Yeah. So, but with GPT-4, that goes up to like I think 32,000 tokens versus 4,000. That's a lot. So imagine how much you could feed into it as context, right? You can feed like a whole project, a whole software project almost, and it'll probably be able to like synthesize all of it and then create solutions as needed, right? But even then, now that sounds like a lot, right? But keep in mind that's actually not a lot if you think about it in the context of everything, right? So have you heard of LangChain or vector databases?
No, I have not. Tell me about it.
Okay. So LangChain, right, is essentially a framework that allows for large language models to kind of interact with your own provided sets of data, right? And not only is it also a framework for large language models to be able to do that, right? It also allows for the combination and usage of multiple AI agents. So this kind of ties close to AutoGPT, and essentially with LangChain, right? Combine that with something like vector databases. So vector databases compared to, your traditional databases of tables and all that, right? Vector databases organizes data in vectors. Okay. So a vector being, just an array of numbers, right? So with that, yeah.
Sorry to pull on. Is it
Go for it.
similar to relational database? But
Similar.
because vector could. Like relation database is basically a linear relationship between two entities going on with it. But vector could be the word vector could be any dimension itself. It can just not. It doesn't have to be one dimension. It doesn't have to be 2 dimensional. It can be 3 dimensional, 4 dimensional, or 5D, or go beyond with that. Right? Is that the difference, or
it is a multi-dimensional database, yes, but they are not particularly relational databases since they don't have direct connections.
Okay.
So they are grouped in similarities though, based off the numbers, based off like the vectors themselves. So think about it like this, right? You got a school lunchroom, right? Everybody's kind of got their own cliques, yeah? Everyone's got their own group they talk to, right? You've got the jocks, you've got the nerds, you've got the academics, right? So let's say I wanted to query something, right? I wanted to ask about Star Wars, okay? What's most similar of those cliques, those groups of people? The nerds. I go ask them. I go find the Star Wars person. I go find the Star Wars person who knows about this specific Star Wars thing. You know what I'm getting at? So,
yes.
Yeah. So it's essentially like that's how vector databases kind of are structured, at least at a very high level metaphorical sense. In a metaphorical way. Yeah.
For a pause there.
Yep.
It sounds to me it's either doing like it's basically vector database sounds like it's doing a cluster analysis, doing k-means to separate each stranger groups itself, and then from there we use linear discriminant analysis, which is LDA in short, and basically you have a thing that you want to label on, and you do where this label will belong into about this kind of thing, and it will find a way to connect to that cluster and going on. So that's basically.
I'm not 100%. I haven't delved into it like super deep, but I know enough, at least as to its high level workings and its concept. Okay. That's something you might want to go into, because I know you're going into data science. Like this is definitely something like you're gonna want to know. Trust me. I don't know too much, but I know enough to know it's important. Yeah, I know enough to know that it's important and as to how critical it is and how it can be used. And in the landscape of AI, right? Though vector databases are known to be rather efficient as to looking for specific things. And so if you think about that, right, for AI with large data sets, you got to be able to query things fast. And so that being the case, let's say for example, so what I want to do with Ash eventually is I want to essentially implement LangChain and vector databases for Ash. That way, when she has a huge database of past conversations, right, she can recall upon them really quickly. And so if you think about that, right?
Efficient.
Go on. Wait, what?
It's efficient, and so it's very fast when we calling it data.
If I remember correctly, I think I read it was O to the log n.
O to the log n.
Yes.
That is fast. That is indeed fast. Okay.
O log n, not O to the log n. Sorry.
Well, because relation database is basically how many connectors you go on with it, with the n and n to the how many powers of itself, which is really slow relatively. But people say that's efficient enough to use for database, which is I kind of disagree. But hey, if that's fast, if it's better than that, speed itself. Going on. Okay, continue. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm fact checking myself real quick. I think I read it was log n. I think it had a big O for log n. Vector database log O. I mean, not big O.
Log n. For instance, just so you know, what's big O in general is basically the runtime, how fast things can move when it comes to code. Because when you run small inputs and outputs, it doesn't really matter that much. But if you're running massive amount of inputs, let's say 1 million inputs going on, how efficient those outputs can come out in a fast turn? And the small number of that equation is better. It's for n. ON basically means that it's a linear. Whenever it comes in, it comes out within a linear time. Whereas if you're doing n square, how many inputs going on, it will be the square amount of time be coming out itself, right? If it's to O n log n, basically it will increase first, but as it increases, continue goes on, then the speed difference of coming out the output is going to be mostly similar itself. So there's a certain threshold that will be a lot of change, and then later on be slow change going on itself. And it could be any format itself. So people tend to write the code as much as possible, or write their programs as much as possible to make the runtimes really fast, so that people do not get frustrated on their side, or just make it more efficient in a way to get outputs as fast as possible. In terms of people, for another one called relation database I was talking about earlier, is basically using entities and connecting to each database itself. So there is a database set that has people, and we have another database that's called pets, let's say. They're separate entities, and then we can connect them because people owns pets, so we can connect them. Say one person can have many pets, where one pet belongs to one person. So you can pull it up which person has how many pets they have, and pull it up from there based upon their unique ID itself. There's more information about it. This is a very poor example of me describe what relational
I think it's pretty good.
relational databases are. Okay, I think I appreciate it, but there's definitely a lot of it going on. It's basically connecting and going on. So rather than having an Excel sheet, the reason why we have a relation database is that when it comes to Excel, that's just it's just not unclean data, and you have the same redundant information. So rather than having that, just having just one information people, and just having connection going on with it, so it reduces redundancy, and also reduce the size of data we necessarily hold on to it, because having that much data of additional redundancy costs about, like, let's say, I don't know, 2 megabytes, for instance. But by doing that, it reduces 2 megabytes. It seems not a lot, but it is a lot of data when it comes to, because each data, let's say it's about like 1 kilobyte. That's a very small unit itself.
Mm-hmm.
1 kilobyte. Okay, I can now we're going big kilobytes and megabytes, and you can difference itself. Kilobyte is more like a gram, let's say, whereas a megabyte is more like a kilogram, or even a ton, let's say. That's a difference right there. That's how big it is in terms of weight, right? If that's the same idea for data as well too, it's gonna be really efficient going on. But anyway, did you pull up the runtime?
So okay, so from what I'm reading, if I could still be wrong, but so from what I'm reading, it's so it's like O log n for best case and worst case on. So that if the tree's unbalanced.
On is still, you don't say trees because that's people will be confused. On is still efficient though.
Yes. So not 100%. This is still a learning area of mine, but but that, like, there's definitely something to consider as to how it can be incorporated into AI. And like, so something I was thinking about is what happens when you like collect enough data about yourself, right? Like, let's say someone wanted to, I got this idea from this one scientist. I don't remember who it was, but essentially he records a massive amount of his conversations. And so I thought to my, so that in the future, if there's an AI that could replace him, he'd do it. And so that got me thinking, eventually, like, if someone were to decide to record a massive amount of their conversations and everything they've said in their life, or just in general, like text data, just like vocal data, etc., right? What happens when you funnel that all together into a singular AI to train on? It becomes you, kind of.
I haven't thought about that, but okay. Okay.
Wait, I'm curious. Your opinion. If you could, okay, post death, if you could have an AI live for you, would you? Granted, like, obviously it would be known that it's an AI, but would you have it take your place?
When you
Or
say
just
live
in
for
general?
me, it mean like it also has a physical activity involvement as well too, or
Sure, let's
consciousness?
yeah, sure. Let's say it gets to the point. Okay, have you watched the movie Transcendence?
No, I wish I have not.
Okay, that's a great movie. Like, straight up, it's basically a movie about a person who's dying, and they transfer their consciousness into, like, the internet, or onto the internet, or just as an AI, right? and eventually that AI gets total control of everything, and it has access to everything. It's everywhere. Okay. So without going too deep into that, right? How do you feel about that?
Okay.
Upload. Okay, now we're kind of jumping ship. We're going a little bit outside of AI, but this is still a fun topic. I think I still kind of want to explore with you.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like about being cloned? Because if you could be cloned or have your consciousness transferred, would you?
That's a hard question.
We're jumping deep.
I don't know. I feel like it'll. I don't think I would feel comfortable at all. For my
Interesting.
own.
Why is that?
I
Do you not
it would be-
trust it?
because that clone is still me up to this point. It does not indicate it will not be the same that would make same decision makings when it comes to each situation.
Afterwards, yes.
Because when it comes to decision making, right? I like just in general, like what you base upon is the most relevant event that you have encountered is similar enough when it comes to that, and think about it to there. Whereas AI or that clone that has an AI have all the information, and they might have a slightly different information on it too. Like they have other information that all the way back that I don't even recall myself, and make decisions that
Interesting.
make it more efficient. But sometimes something that efficiency does not convert to an idea of being the most rational decision itself. Something irrational decision making. Again, this is even going more off topic. Economic itself, we make an assumption when it comes to anything. We always assume that whatever we do is always we always try to be our best self to be rational decision making itself. But in reality, we are not. We are always irrational decision making, and that
Yes.
makes more human more interesting and more fascinating. And that's why these irrational decision makes actually more interesting returns and opportunities than something that reduces risk, obviously. But that's the way it makes it more engaging and stuff going on with it. And an AI model will not consider that as a rational versus irrational. It will always go for the rational, most efficient, because that's what any code would like to do.
So I'm
So
curious.
I think I don't think it would be the same. I don't think I would be comfortable when it comes. I don't think it would be exactly the same. So that's why I don't
Okay.
feel comfortable having a clone myself.
What if its goal was to emulate you as best as it can? Because if that were the case, personally, I'm like in that middle ground, like maybe, maybe not. So the reason why I would want to is maybe in the future, I wanted it to maybe finish something for me or do something post-mortem, right? Or care for someone or something. That's about the reason
Okay.
I would have it. And also for the very slight chance, all right, that the ability to transfer conscientiousness also transfers, I guess, what would be called the soul, depending on what your beliefs are. That might vary, but like you yourself may actually go with it, you know. And it's like, then we're going now we're going into the idea of immortality. That'll be a different topic for another day. But let's say it can emulate you. Let's say it can emulate you. Right? Because I mean, we've got these technologies coming out, right? We've got Neuralink coming out, and Neuralink can do a bunch of things. Okay. So Neuralink, real quick. We're gonna do quick rabbit hole to another real quick. So Neuralink, right? It's been shown, not just in Neuralink, but just in psychological studies, that your brainwaves can predict what you are going to do next before you even do it, right? And that's kind of crazy to think about, right? And if it can predict your actions and all that, right? And the same thing goes with images too. So granted, not the most accurate thing. I think recently, like I saw videos or something about that. It was like where someone literally took an MRI of the brain while they were shown images, right? And they were able to interpret like what they saw in the brain into actual images. Granted, they weren't one-to-one, but they were similar in different aspects, right? So think about this. What if we get to the point where Neuralink is recording what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, and what we feel, right? As all the way down to our emotions, all the way down to our thoughts, right? And eventually all that data piles up, right? All that data piles up. And eventually comes the time where next thing you know, cyberpunk happens and we can literally transfer our consciousness over. Right? That's kind of crazy to think
Okay.
about.
Okay. Just
I know that was a lot.
It's a lot, but let's go one by one. Let's
Yes.
talk about the whole aspect of all the taste itself, all the taste, all the feel, all the look, all the parts.
Yes.
In reality, right now, that seems like possible. But let's say everyone has their own taste buds that's different itself. Everyone have their own things that look differently. Everyone have their own thought that's think differently as well too. We have the thinking part that's somewhat encountered in a way with using ChatGPT or the AI we have here. But we do not have a strong establishment in terms of seeing, tasting, feeling going on.
Yes.
Because
this is correct.
if we have to be realistic, whatever it comes to narrow down, always bottom down is binary number when it comes to it. But above a little bit up there, it's just numbers, just data of numbers and stuff based upon that. So let's say that we taste water, right? I might taste water differently than what you taste water, let's say. I don't know if water even have a taste, let's say. If it does, let's say it has. How would you score that? How would you consider as a data of the taste itself? Or how are we going to see a thing? Because technically when it comes to seeing it, right? Computer vision is pixels, right? How do we know that seeing is the same idea that I see it versus the AI see it versus how you see it? What makes a difference in a way as well too, right? Also, when it comes to just anything about like other senses as well too, like feel as well. How do you feel differently than how I feel? Because my hands are, let's say, it's more softer than yours. I feel like it's more rough. For you, feel the same. Like, how do you feel that? Like,
It's
how
difficult
do you
to put in the
that
numbers.
to make a sport? Right, it's hard to put in numbers. So that's why, in reality, as current technology, and we have to make a standard for that to make sure that that makes sense to use as a matrix to continue using, develop it on. Consciousness and decision making, getting information onto it. It's easy enough because that's not just numbers itself, it's also text. I guess someone converts with numbers, but it's at least text that the AI can learn about it, and it's a standard universal thing that's spread it out across that we all agree upon with it. We need to find a metric that agrees upon with all those tastes, smell, looks, feel, to order to say that we have a consciousness to create an entire human clone that we have identified as considered soul. That's why it's right now with current technology, and I don't think it's going to be possible within the next decade, even though just being ballsy here.
Probably 4
next
decades.
decade, because how
5.
Yeah, about that seems about right. But I don't think that's going to be established into it.
Yes.
But you're right. Neural network is crazy. If we have that skill, it has established as a matrix that we agree upon with it, and saying that, oh yeah, that taste right there, that's the lemon is a sour of 86ness right there. If we all agree upon that and say, yeah, that's good, that matrix is calling on, then yeah, it would definitely will able to clone it in a way as well too. But you unpacked a lot of things. I lost my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of like, wait, where are we going?
But at least for that part
Yeah.
itself, like it's impossible as of right now to create that. AI
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Text right there and voice right there is possible, but
Text is very doable.
Sound, at least we have sound is possible because we have matrix and stuff. We have a matrix decibel to utilize it to make what sounds possible, what sounds people like, what bass they like. We have a number for itself. Remember feelings. Oh yeah, feelings. We don't even know what's matrix for feelings itself. How do you feel like I love? What's the love for matrix itself? Do I?
Now we're gonna get into like, what is consciousness?
Right, like, right. It's all involved with AI itself, with conscious. Well, some of that, but also like it's hard to tell. Even in fact that we don't even know how our brain actually works out. We only
Very
know
true.
10% of brain works in general. We haven't dived in deep enough. We don't even know ourselves much, and we're trying to mimic ourselves by making a clone for an AI for them, which is kind of crazy. But that's
Then it comes down to the point of like, yeah, then it comes down to the point of like, what defines our consciousness? Is it all the chemical reactions and all the synapses just firing in our head, or is there something more to it, or is there something not tangible? And that kind of brings me to one thing. Have you heard of the ship of thesis?
Ship of thesis? No, I have not.
Okay, so it's a philosophical debate / dilemma So let me explain it real briefly. So there was a sailor, okay, who had a ship.
Mm-hmm.
He came into port, and he told the shipbuilder, "Hey, this part needs to be replaced. This board needs to be replaced. It's starting to rot." Okay, so that board gets replaced. All right.
Okay.
And he leaves. His ship has one board replaced. Another time he comes back, "Hey, this entire part of the ship needs to be replaced." Starts replacing that, leaves, and over time, as the ship starts to wear down, right, one by one, each board is then replaced. All right, until no board remains from the original ship. All right, every board has been replaced now. All right, now this shipbuilder, right, that's been repairing his ship, kept every single one of those boards and reassembled. Well, using those boards, not reassembled, sorry, assembled a ship using those boards, and only those boards alone. Okay, so all of the parts put together onto a ship. Which one is the ship of Theseus? Is it the ship that had all of its parts replaced, or the ship that is made of all of those old parts from the original ship, or what's quote unquote the original ship? Which one is the ship of Theseus?
Okay.
You see what I'm getting at though with this?
Yes, I looked it up, and it's a
Yeah.
paradox. Which one it is? Which one came first? It's literally it's the chicken or the egg, basically.
Very
the same
similar,
idea
yes.
itself, too.
Which one would it
Based
be?
on how you described it, and how I'm sitting right now thinking about it right now, at this time, it might change if you ask me the same question again in a different
Mhm.
time. But I personally think it's the replaced one. It's the replaced one that has been completed, not the one that has been created. One that using the old parts assembled somehow. It's the one that has been created. I've been replacing all the time, because over time and time that you will also will encounter or utilize the how should I put it as depreciation. Depreciation happens over time as well too, and that part itself converts depreciation to the attachment of soul. Have you? Okay, it sounds a little bit off topic. But you're watching the anime called One Piece. One Piece, right? The case how they replace the entire ship. When you first described it as paradox to me, I was like, oh, this might be One Piece, right? Well, they have said that the ship has changed completely 180 degrees, but the soul itself is still there to convert it as like a new ship on itself. Whoever is on the ship is the real owner of the ship itself. The whole soul is going on to it as well. So I personally believe that whatever creation it comes to the next, that's a replacement. And as long as we have the game the same energy towards to that thing, let's say, then it will be the same as previous what we had before. It might have new features that we don't encountered, but it will still serve the same thing, in my opinion. That's my opinion. It's not a it's not a
Interesting take.
conclusion of it. It's my thought. I don't know about yours, but that's my thought.
Okay, so for me, I don't particularly have a concrete answer.
And you asking me about this question?
I am leaning towards the reconstructed ship. Now, I say the reconstructed ship out of the old parts. I lean towards that, all right, because of something intangible. But if we're talking about tangible parts, well, I mean, God, it's tough. So why I lean towards the reconstructed ship of the old parts was because those boards carried the history of the ship. The people who stepped on each board and who stepped on that board and when that board got stepped on, or when that board was hit or destroyed, or when water splashed on it or anything, right? It carries that history. Right. But that's something intangible, which is difficult to like say as to which ship is truly the ship of Theses if we're like not including things are intangible. So then
We can go on debate.
oh yeah, this goes forever. But I'm leaning
But
towards
I
that.
don't
That's
like-
my answer. I'm going off the history. As some
I'm more on the currently who owns it, because during these parts of replacement stuff, you say one thing has been replaced over time.
Mm.
That also has history, let's say, that continue associated with the
fair, but
board
that's new
itself.
history.
But it's history.
True, but it is not the original that came before. So the way I see it is like from a deterministic point of view, and that is that like at least looking at humans at least, right? We are made up of our previous experiences and our past kind of memories. And that's kind of what makes up who we
Right.
are, right? I wouldn't be sitting here if I wasn't going to OSU. I wouldn't be going to OSU if I lived somewhere else, right? Our experience and our like own life circumstances is kind of what dictates who I am and where I am at today. And that's at least for me why I say, or I'm leaning towards the ship made of the old parts, because it carries that history. Though I can also argue the other ship is the real one. I can very much well do that too. But I'm just like,
Yeah,
personally,
yeah,
I lean towards that side.
It's because we talked about this before in last podcast episodes too.
Just a little, yeah.
What's the line between creativity versus plagiarism as well too when it comes to ChatGPT, right? We talked
Mhm.
about this as well too. And that's the line and same idea itself of whether is the old one is considered as the original as being creative enough, or is a new one modified that's changed itself on blade stuff as also original. Like I personally believe if I really have to be more like out of view, both of them were original enough by it has its own story itself. So they're
Yes.
both original way. But if we have to choose the one, which one is the original one,
It's tough.
I personally feel like still go for the new one in my personal
Okay.
belief. Because
Okay. So now let's apply that.
I don't
Let's apply that to. Let's apply that to, I guess, conscientious transfer. So let's say.
with new narratives.
So let's say post-mortem an AI is then constructed as best as it can one-to-one of your consciousness and yourself.
Oh, if I'm using the same idea of logic, damn it, that makes my whole I don't believe the clone, and now I'm in the clone now. Damn it, you played along with this.
It's tough though. It's tough because you think about it, right? And you kind of come back to square one all over again. It's like, wait. It's
But what
like
about
there's always something.
That's
Huh?
it's always like we talked about this in part one, creativity. What's the line between those two? And we always think about, but what if we switch the topic to this? Does this change as well too? And yes, it does change. Same idea. Does this change if we do over here versus not, right? Damn it, you played me
It's
along.
tough.
Huh?
It's super tough. But these are kind of like
So what-
conversations I love though.
So what do you think then? What do you think? Is that
What do I think?
basically because you thought that ship of thesis is basically the original one, the old parts that have itself. Do you believe that the clone of yours, let's say, is exactly the same? Do you feel comfortable with that? Do you agree what would the clone would do?
If it's trained and like properly one-to-one in terms of conscientiousness, I would think yes.
So now you go in the opposite then of what you said about the ship of thesis then.
So now, mind you, consciousness. This is kind of the thing I was saying though. It's the history. Train on your consciousness being your history. Train on all of your history. So it's got that pool of data of all your conversations, your site, everything.
Okay, I gotta stop you for a second, because the word history is also, we gotta think about it too. History, it is not. So we have data. Data itself is
Yes.
completely raw things. It's not even, to me, about data. It's just completely raw things that has no information at all. Information is basically the data and converts it in a way that satisfy their own person needs itself, or satisfy the way to see patterns going on with it, or see like anything ongoing. Which means, and during that process itself, is introducing bias to it. Right. The same idea goes along with history, which I was going to say this topic later, but I can throw it right now. History also talks about what happens in the event, and that's what the word history comes along with it. But that's not actually true. The word history itself is how the people reported about the event itself, which means it's information about this story. It's not the data of the history, which means it has been converted into your own bias. So, in other words, when it comes back to AI of history, when you're treating information as your own history, it means you have your own bias into it. It's not going to be the best one, but it will have your own bias into it when it's fitting into the data of the AI itself, which means it could be the same as you, but it can also deviate as well too, as well with it, even though you say it's 100% history based of your experience itself. If you say, history. But
are you saying the bias would go with
data,
it?
If you just do data itself, it won't go along with it. Whereas if you say history about yourself, it will go along with it. So the way how you treat the data is going to be different if you see the word history versus data. If you see information as history, it will most likely be the same, but it'll be more smarter and be more knowledge about what happened in the past. But if you're just feeding just data, which makes sense, because that's the most ideal way instead of information, because that's, you also need to process that, and that's conversion back to data. Is why would you do that if you just send out data, right? It's going to be different. It has no bias. It's going to be reviewed differently, right? Which means that it will be understanding the idea, the logic itself, seeing the word that you think will be very different than what you think it is. So that's why it's also the reason why I say I don't know about that, because the way how it feeds as well in the process is going to be very different, right? And to be honest, even though we say history repeats itself and history is probably the best way to learn it in general, there's always bias in that thing, right? Like, we talk about ancient Greek, the glorious gods of Zeus and all the parts itself, right? That's already a lot of bias into it, favoring towards Zeus and all the more ideology there, right? It's great they have that ideology, but people use ideology as like a beneficial, like, oh, I should use that ideology because that's what people use in the past and call it good. But that's already bias in there that should not be used. It's more like that had that thought before. We should know about that. We should think about it as more as a data sense of point instead of a information sense of point, right? Even if we look at the same data itself and look at the same, like we find the exact same pattern of it, someone might interpret differently than how you interpret stuff. So that's what makes it different itself. And technically, history comes in the point that whoever wins in that era writes the history.
The victors
whoever loses
write
would be all
history.
burnt out, would be all gone.
Yeah.
Right. Which means it's really biased to themselves about it too.
So
that's the same idea of the AI too.
Yeah. So let's say what gets ported over though, what gets trained on, right, does incorporate your actions and your choices.
But how do and what makes it history then? What makes it data then? What makes it data then?
The data would consist of like what you've seen, what you've heard, what you've tasted in order. Everything is one-to-one with everything you can recall, and not just everything you can recall, but literally everything up here. So all of your senses, as far as in depth as it goes.
But what's one's consciousness in the brain versus which one is just data? Which one's biased information versus which is not?
That is a tough one.
Right. How do you know about that? Right. Even though it's like all in here about your own history, you might, our brain conscious, also mimic the way that favors towards themselves as well too. How do you know that? Right? That's why we have this podcast recorded, so that we don't lose that consciousness, lose that data information.
Yeah.
Itself. But how do you know about that? How do you know this is the fundamental number one thing that I can trust into in my entire life? How do you know about that? I don't trust my brain at all. That when it comes to decision making, that's why I'm a data scientist. Look at all the data, see what the data statistics says, and based upon any analysis comes with it, like okay, that decision makes more sense.
What does the data say?
With my biased information, but the data says it this way as well too. That can convert to information, right? But yeah, even though we say mimic everything from here, you going on with it. How do you know that's exactly you? And asking to do exactly that will be your clone, exactly the same clone. It's impossible. And at this point, it's impossible to get 100% same clone as you. That's my thought.
It's an interesting take. I don't know. It's like, I feel like with enough data, though, it would be able to at least predict your biases. Because, I mean, if you think about it, right? Like, knowing what you've done in the past would stand to reason that it would also be able to predict what you'd likely do in any given situation.
Right. Yeah.
It's tough.
It's a lot of caution. It's a lot of cautions out there in the world that which one is which is the right one, right? I mean, yeah, it's not just us as well too. It's just anyone right now who's doing research on it right now knows that this is a lot of limitations, a lot of things going on that's making people to think a lot about it. In fact, that it opens a new search area that people start research and study about it right now to talk about it about this area. So I think it's hard to say right now. It's hard to say right now what's looking like, what's going on in general. And also, one of the things that we have in the bullet point, the price of personal data as well too. Like the word price of is also interesting, but also the idea of personal data.
Yeah.
Which one is, like I said before, what is personal data itself? What's the I'm going too deep. What's the line between personal versus public data? Like what after you behave in general stuff is personal? But it's
I honestly think that line. Yeah, I think that line is honestly, as we go through, as technology advances and like we start to incorporate more into our daily lives, whether that's through our phones or like through anything really that we interact with, I think that line starts to get even more blurry. Because what was considered our own private data before could very much be just public data at this point, right? So consider that. Yeah, I mean, like, so consider this. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was in like grade school, we were taught never to use our real names online, and yet here we are now. It's very commonplace.
So hi, my name is Ken, and your name is Peter, right there, right?
Yep.
The reason why that could have been the case in grade school, in my opinion, is more like the cybersecurity wise. Security wise, how like again,
that's true.
Privacy itself, how it comes up with that. But again, we didn't have the technology to say that your name will be, we can search you everywhere if you say your name outside and online. Right? But I don't think that. Even as of now, the technology, I don't think just saying the name itself will identify who you are, what you're doing, what's up now. And before that, obviously no, because we didn't have the technology as well. So I think it's more like a misconcept, or it's just mean like, or like what is it? What is it called? What do you call that? Controversial or like controversial opinion about. Controversy information about their controversy opinion on their online media itself, because we don't know what it is, right? But now we know what it is. That's what it's like. Oh, it's fine. Yep. And even though it is leaked out there, it's how it has been before that it's been out. I know one of my friends, she is very, very, really aware of that, so she's always like she does not have any social media at all, not even single one at all. She doesn't want her information be in public, but sadly it is public because you have to it's already out there by just either from news articles out there online or something else as well too. It's already
Mhm.
public in a way that's information identifiable. Well, making social media will make it more identifiable, but
Yeah.
it's out there. So no one in the world, I don't say no one, about like
Unless you're a
80% of the
hermit.
world right now is, unless you're a hermit or you live in a area that has no internet access at all whatsoever and you've never been outside. About 90% or 80% of the world population has been exposed into the
Mhm.
internet. It's out there. So I don't think at this point, name itself is a privacy of personal data. At this point, it's just a data
Yeah.
that's in public that people can, like in fact, if you search up my name, Kenneth King, you can literally find tons of Kenneth King on it, right? But the Google search engine or ChatGPT will search the most relevant one that nearby you. So if you search up Kenneth King in the area that where we live right now, you'll find me most likely. Whereas if you search Kenneth King in the East Coast in the United States, you'll find it there the most closest Kenneth King in that area as well. So we use that
Mhm.
information to identify it as well. So again, personal data for that point is not personal; it's more public data. But
Oh, yeah.
what makes it personal? What makes it personal for you? What's your opinion when it comes to personal versus public data?
For me, I would draw that line around information, not specifically that's personally identifiable, but rather information that has power to it, if that makes sense. So
What does that does power
so let's say
use then?
you're social. That would be a number or like or a piece of information that has power to it, right? That you can do something with. Like to kind of, so I guess from the stance of fraud, you'll be able to act as that person. But then again, I guess personal data also branches out into other issues, right? Because you also got like targeted advertising and all those things, right? Because targeted advertising is literally going to influence you, whether you realize it or not. And with targeted advertising, right, that's whether advertising has a higher, as to if higher, as, okay, I can English. As to if advertising has an effect on you, there's a much greater chance that targeted advertising will influence you more than advertising that wasn't targeted, right? Because targeted advertising is going to show you stuff that's more relevant to you, you're more likely to click on, and so forth. And so, there's that entire whole kind of, that's kind of its own explorative thing, but like as to what I would consider private that I wouldn't share and wouldn't want other people to know, I guess I would kind of boil down to like things that are, I guess, actionable, if that makes sense. That was a terrible explanation, but
All good. To sum it up, what you're saying that whatever data that people can identify you, not just only identify, but also
act on.
mimic you in a way
Yes.
that can go on with it. I think that's a fair borderline in my opinion as well too when it comes to it. Not the best line, not the absolute one, but I think that's a fair borderline between what's personal versus public. Because like getting on the internet itself, is that personal data versus private data, right? I don't think it's personal at this point. It's public data that people are getting on the internet searching up stuff about.
It's commonplace now.
Commonplace, but if you're saying that's looking into your email inbox, you mean that's more personal data because that's can mimic you in a way sending a response itself, right? So that part itself could be personal data, but it's not 100%. It's someone as well too, because that some of the email itself has also been public to other people who knows about this too, right? Whereas looking on, I don't know, something that you're looking at something that it seems really just only you know about it and no one else knows about it, then that's personal information. Like, but again, it's hard at this point. There's so much data overflow, and we don't know which one is personal, which one's private. I don't personal versus public. I don't even know which one is which.
It's such a blurred line nowadays.
One thing I do know that's nice for me as a data scientist and data analysis is because all information right now, all data is blurred right now. It can use anything. I can use anything for data analysis.
If it's out there, I can use it.
So, exactly. I can use it whenever I want to use it. If it's out there. No need to dig in. I can just use it if I want to. Yeah.
All right.
We talked a lot.
Yeah, we did. I think we're nearing that point. All
Any
right.
things you want to talk about? We talked about Auto GPT or AGI, but
Yeah.
we haven't gotten deep. I want to talk deep about this one because you hyping me up with the whole idea of stream of thoughts.
Oh boy.
But
So yeah, auto GPT. So it's a string of thoughts, right? Or at least that's essentially what it is. So the hype's definitely died down for it, for me at least, because when I was using it, it's like, okay, maybe this is not as great as I thought it was yet. But auto GPT, to quickly familiarize you with it and also others, auto GPT is essentially a program that utilizes OpenAI's API and their language models, GPT 3.5 and GPT 4.0, to accomplish tasks. And those tasks can range from anything. So think about, let's say you had Jarvis from Iron Man, right? Quite literally the equivalent. I know Microsoft has their own version, Microsoft Jarvis, as they've named it quite literally. So essentially, you could give it a task and it'll go do it one way or another. One of the tasks I gave it was create me a Gmail account and save the login credentials. It didn't successfully do it, but it did perform a lot of the steps to get there. And what it would do in this instance was, so I gave it that prompt, right, and its steps and what it needed to do. And it would quite literally go and do it, and it would say, hey, I need to do this step. Do you approve this step? Yes. Or you can even set it to run on its own, which can be a little sketchy, depending on what it does. But essentially, you would give it a task, it goes and does it. Quite literally, simple as that. But if you think about it, right, the possibilities are rather endless as to what you can ask it to do. Anything it can do on a computer, it can do. So it was able to browse web links, click on links, create things, and much more. So that's definitely something that gives kind of a glimpse to the technological singularity. Like, not so far glimpse, though it's still very far, to be honest, based off my experience.
why do you think the hype train is down right now regarding this? Because it seems
So,
because
okay, I wouldn't say the hype train is dead. For me, it is a little bit, primarily as to how far developed they are and how capable they are. It's still rather limited because oftentimes it will fail on certain things. But though I will say, for some people, it has been rather successful. I know people who have created entire programs from giving it a prompt, or even a game. But I would say the hype's died down a little because I think everybody kind of got swept, like, had the rug swept from under them for a brief moment when this all came out. Because it's like, whoa, this is basically digital God mode, right? You can ask it to do something, it goes and does it. Realistically, the outcome it produces is not always that great. As in, it doesn't exactly accomplish the task all the time that well. That's why I kind of say it's kind of died down a little bit. But it is definitely something. It's the dream project. It is a dream project that a lot of people are working on. And what I mean by that is it's kind of the end goal to reach, and not reach, but to develop an AGI. Like, the first AGI that is to come will be that turning point in which, I guess, the AI singularity is here. Technological singularity. It would be the marking point of it. And why I say that, right, is it would be the one technology that transforms everything. The idea that it can do anything, digitally at least, and possibly in future even physically, if you think about it, right? Let's say that thing gets onto the internet and goes out, finds a bot and that can do things, a humanoid bot from Boston Dynamics or something, and now it's physical. But anyways, we're kind of branching off there. But it's one of those things where it's like, the fact we got a glimpse of it, that's why it's kind of gotten a lot of hype.
I mean, the word Jarvis on Marvel Iron Man definitely shows that.
Yeah.
Like how powerful it is, and to be honest, it's crazy. Like it's how crazy now. And I'm going off topic. How movies kind of predict the future and how so much being accurate enough, like Back to the Future, like untying your shoes, license itself. So also thing exists right now. Jarvis that we talked about in 2008, that like 2008 or 2009, the Iron Man came out. Jarvis itself was like, oh, that's
2008.
impossible, but now 2008, right? But it came out, and now it's actually being close to being reality, right? We're talking about like no monitor, no nothing, but we can have our own keyboard, digital keyboard, or digital monitor that's no display required. That's also a thing that's coming out as well too, right? Which is
I want to
how
chip in on
technology
that.
involved with time.
When it comes, like, I don't. Okay, personally, way down the road, I don't even think keyboards are going to be a thing anymore. Or just in general, monitors, keyboard, mouse. That's my own views.
That's an interesting take. We can talk about that in a second. But
Yes.
to wrap it off my thought regarding with AutoGPT, I think it will get there. I think it will get there. Well, we're talking about new network and cloning ourselves of that part. That's going to take more than a decade, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But this, I can see this can develop within a decade. I can see this happen. Like how fast ChatGPT came out, and now how things are wrapping up and going into, and a lot of attention is getting hyped going on. I can see this going to happen as well. And if you incorporate this ChatGPT idea on top of any, like going back to a bit my project side, VR. Oh boy, it's going to be. We will literally have a NPC that has a bot that looks like a human.
I know.
In a virtual world, and we'll do the same idea as well too. And that could be the learning-based model.
Have you seen NVIDIA's keynote last week, or this past week?
I kinda did. I read it in an article, but not much.
Okay. One of the things they showed off was using large language models for AI, and how like they would literally you would talk to the AI, and that kind of opens up a massive amount of possibilities as to what you can respond with, what the bot could respond with, and what you could say to the bot. You're no longer restricted to like a dialogue selection. Say this, say that, or this. You can now just talk to it and it'll respond back. So it's kind of insane. Granted, I saw that coming from a mile away though. Like it was like months ago. I was like, imagine this being used in games. Which, obviously I'm not gonna be the only one who has that idea. A bunch of people did. And here it is, and now it's coming. That's something to think about.
But going back to your hot take of there will be no monitors, no mouse, no keyboard. So what will we replace it?
Something like Neuralink. That's the thing. So here's the thing, right? So let's think about first principles, right? First principle thinking, okay? What are we doing with monitors, keyboards, mice?
Just see to interact, type in, right?
Not quite. Go higher up. First principle. What is happening?
I mean, I guess we're searching up information that we need to. Let's say that, right? If we go and we just spoil it out what it is.
Okay. Information transfer. With a monitor, we are transferring information digitally to our consciousness and our mind to interpret. With our keyboard and mouse, we transfer information from here onto a digital interface, right? That's the goal. That's what we're doing. Information transfer. That's at the very highest level. That is what we're doing, right? You strip away everything else, every other principle. That is baseline it. Okay. Now, the rate at which we transfer that information is limited, very limited by our biology. We are limited as to how fast we can read, how fast we can talk, how fast we can type and move the mouse to click, right? The same thing will apply if we end up digitizing screens to maybe in our Google Glass, we can see screens before our eyes and a digital Air keyboard we can type on, right? We are still limited by that biology, right? Now, what's the closest we can get to eliminating a lot of those biological limitations? a direct interface with the brain. That's where Neuralink would come in. And we would literally, at light speed, transfer information and communicate with people or just computers in general instantaneously. So think about this, right? I can think of an essay in my head instantaneously, and it is done within 5 minutes, 1,000-word essay. Basically at the rate I would read it out in my head, or like that would be, or think it out in my head. That would be the rate of information transfer we're looking at to at least communicating through text, at least, right? But even then, imagine if you wanted to express a picture to someone, right? How do you convey that information? You have to paint a whole painting. You gotta know how to paint first off, right? That takes time. You just mental airdrop. That's what's happening here. Instant. So the future, I don't think we're not going to have keyboards and mice and screens in the future.
Okay. There's a lot of information that I have a lot of take on. Go on. First, let me write that down just in case I forget. One was neural network that we talked about. Network.
Neuralink.
2 was talking about Neuralink network that we're talking about here. 2, it was the ethical concerns that I got popped in my head. And 3, damn it, I lost my third one. Understanding materials. Understanding concept. Yes, let's look at that. So first, neural network itself. First of all, yes, that could be true, that we could connect an idea that we can go on with it. However, it comes in line with neural network with also ethical concern with it. Do people want that? Do people want that idea to connect the idea to order access information they need to look for information? Do they want to connect that to itself? And I personally think that some people will do it, like who's really enthusiastic about technology.
Mm-hmm.
But some people would definitely be like, oh no, the way I'm talking right now sounds like very conservative at this point. But like, some people will be like very.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, I don't think, yes, the keyboard and then the monitor and the mouse industry will go down, but I don't think it will be completely done because there's people who like to access information using this way.
That's fair.
In fact, that people, there's reason why, like there's why people choose to live using just notebooks and pencils, right? Even though it's ancient stuff, not ancient, it's old way to learn information. Ancient was a bad term. Understanding concept in itself, people tend to write in that way, taking notes and stuff, versus people using keyboard to take notes, taking notes online, versus people using their iPad taking notes on, versus people just memorizing it. I don't know, that's the way to learn. Like the way how they understand concept itself is also very different, but each learning style as well too. Like and I personally believe that for myself, and even as of right now, like when it comes to outlining a essay to write about something that I want to write about, like I know I'm going to talk about this, but I personally do not believe myself to say, that outline would be the best one to go on and just go on with it. I write it out on my iPad using my Apple Pencil to say like I think this could be a good outline to go on with it, and then from there I convert into Google Docs or a Word document, outline, copy and paste what I wrote, and also during the process I'll think about and modify along the way while typing, because the process of typing it out and the process of writing it out also gives you thoughts during that process. So like, hey, do you think that is actually a good idea? Or like, hey, do you think we can add additional things into it versus not? Versus maybe you can move this idea. Or hey, can we modify a way to go on this way instead of doing this way? In fact, earlier today, I was working my documentation regarding my capstone project, and the way how I outlined myself, looking back to it, I was like, I don't like that outline again of how I established 2 weeks ago. Let me establish it again and rewrite it again. And I did it again. Right? So doing that time itself, is even though it's small enough and it seems not much, it's still, doing that process stuff does involve with thinking, does involve with thoughts that it seems significant enough that we can't just avoid it and just call it like good enough. Like, yeah, it's nice to be instantaneous, but you're missing the
But what
point
if-
that rethinking it mean more writing these questions or writing these thoughts things more accurately, right?
Yeah.
Or better. I guess better.
But what if you could also do that processing? Because, like,
How?
let's say you don't have to finish the essay in 5 minutes, but you'd be writing it and processing it in your head over the course of maybe a week. You'd be thinking about it then. But it's a matter of information transfer, though. I get that, like, some people will find paper and pen, like, a tangible source, a tangible method of writing to be favorable. And, you know, you're right. Definitely, like, keyboards, mice, and monitors won't be completely phased out, but they will, I at least think they'll be tremendously, like, less prevalent in the ways we communicate.
I mean, floppy disk is one case now that we talked about how people it's dead, but people still they use it, right? Same as CD. Like, I personally think that CD is still great, but people like, if you talk about new generation, people be like, ew,
Spotify.
old technology. And for me, it's like, oh, that hurts. Right. So, yeah, I think that things will not die completely, but it will be definitely a big turnaround with it. And I think for myself that I don't know if I'll want to be adopting that environment of being more technology towards it or not. Maybe not. We'll see. It's in the air.
There comes a level of acceptance, like, as in, like, well, not acceptance. That's not the right word. Adoption.
Adoption, also ethical concerns about it too. Like, would they agree?
Oh, yeah.
Too. Is that ethical or not? And also, they need to establish the line first in order to continue going on that process. Obviously.
Oh, yeah.
So, do you think that's enough we can talk about for this?
I think that's enough
For this. Because we talked.
We're reaching that 2 hour mark.
Right?
Yeah.
And to be honest, we talked almost everything. The only thing we did not talk about was the plugins, but for ChatGPT. But other than that, it's
That's not really much.
Yeah, that's not much we can talk
That's kinda just expanding.
because we kind of covered as well too. Man, that's a lot.
Salt sesh. That's fun.
That was fun. We had a good conversation for this week for sure. Can't wait this
roll
will be
me out?
posted soon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can roll it out.
Roll us
Currently my
out.
notes June 3rd, June 5th, 1:55 a.m. and this was Ken.
This is Peter.
And signing off for our podcast for today. Good evening, good morning, or whatever you are. Thanks for tuning in.
Have a good night, y'all.